Hello and welcome to Minimise Debt, Maximise Cash with Top Service, where each episode we will give you tips on how to maximise your cash and minimise your debt in the construction industry. My name's Emma Reilly, Top Service CEO, Fellow of the Chartered Institute of Credit Management and current CICM Council Advisory Member representing trade credit. In this episode we continue our series of excerpts from our June 2025 seminar at the Coalface, a half-year review. There are a lot of principles shared, and as we start a new year, we think it is a good idea to remind ourselves of this. This episode is about combating fraudulent practices. You will hear Philip King asking the questions, and Simon Howell of Tarmac, Jonathan Ward of the National Timber Group, Jade Owen of Perry, and Luke Sculthorpe of the CICM providing the answers. If you hear anything that is of value to you, please register for our newsletters on our website and we will let you know when the next webinar is. The link to register is in the show notes of this episode.
Simon, what are the most common fraud tactics you're seeing currently? I know it's changing every week. But...
It does change, but there are two particular ones. And talking to people in the industry, this is very, very common. The first one is long-term fraud, long-term setting up of fraudulent businesses with a particular view, and they layer them so that they come out and available to them because one will be identified and they'll then move on to the next and the next and the next. We see those particularly within our new account process generally. So that's one area. And the second area also is corporate identity fraud. That is people ringing up the likes of Tarmac, National Timber or E.H. Smith and impersonating another business. So that particular one is rife and it can be around anywhere in the country. That as an industry, I think we're probably very open to that because do we have the levels of control generally around that in terms of ordering? And the answer is not really. It's got better, but it's still not as good as it should be. So those are the two biggest types of fraud.
Okay. Jonathan, what are you seeing?
Impersonation fraud, as Simon suggested there, that's probably one of the biggest challenges for us. And we have applications on a weekly basis where we identify this and what have you. The occasional one does get through. We had one a few weeks ago where a customer, somebody impersonating a customer, put an order on a different depot from what the customer normally trades with, and delivered to a different site to what the customer normally trades with. With it being a different depot, they didn't quite capture it, and the customer was in terms and below the credit limit, so it didn't go through the credit vetting process for that order being released, and it slipped through the net. And sometimes you've just got to reinforce with the wider team that if something's different, just do that little bit of extra digging. Speaking to the depot that normally deals with that customer, because the originating depot would have spotted it straight away. And it's sometimes with in the push and the drive to get sales and the enthusiasm of the sales guy, and 10 out of 10 for enthusiasm, but sometimes you've just got to take that pace back and think and ask the question, and reminding that is reminding the business of that. Sometimes it's not a message that they necessarily want to hear, but it's one that they need to hear so that we avoid the fraudulent activity. Fortunately, this one wasn't a significant amount of money, but it's not the point. We all suffer that the occasional lapse, I'm afraid.
Okay.
If I could just add one thing to that, Philip, just to add to what Jonathan's just said, is what we are finding and we believe is that the majority of the people who are trying to perpetrate this fraud have actually worked for the companies who at some time, normally as subbies, for those sort of, because of the nature and the structure of the industry, They know how it all works. They know how the process works. They know how the order system works. That is a major issue for us in terms of, because they make it really difficult to spot.
Yeah, interesting. Jade, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think, yeah, like Jonathan said, the two main types are impersonation, fraud, but we are always really diligent at the point of credit app, and if we're unsure by any of the mini checklists that we've created, we'll ask top service to also do an investigation and give a member ring round as well, because that's a really good indicator of whether they are actually trading or not, or whether the real company actually applied or not. And also about contacting the depot, it's okay that they want to make a sale and that they're enthusiastic, but they're going to have to do a little bit more work at the up front to be able to identify, is it a real person, is it a real company, is there a real site, or are we just dropping to a warehouse or something, which we've had a few times in the past. So we've definitely got people that, because we've experienced those sorts of frauds, they now listen to credit control a little bit more, and they're willing to put that extra work in to get the sale.
So that's interesting. So how do you get that message out to the wider business that needs to be aware of this stuff?
Well, we invented this sort of credit toolbox talk that we'd go around to the depots and we'd give a demonstration and a little bit of a tutorial about what credit control does, all the things that we spot, what we look for, and just to educate them on and how they can find out the best credit-worthy customers that we would like to push, and why we would think somebody is not credit-worthy, and sort of talk them through our decision so that they don't think that we're just saying no, computer says no. They actually appreciate that a lot of research has gone into whether we can give that credit limit or not. And we always try and say yes as well. So if we can't do yes to what they originally request, how can we help them to get it over the line eventually by, a little bit of a negotiation, payments up front, things like that.
Okay, I've had a question on the chat saying, have any of you fallen foul of deep fakes? I've only heard of deep fakes in the context of child abuse and so on. I'm guessing there's some more industrial, commercial, construction type deep fake. I don't know whether these can...
in invoice fraud, there was probably the largest one, must have been over a year ago, could have been longer. Global engineering firm, Arup. Yes, they were victims of this. I think it was some $25 million fraud, not UK centric. I think it was Far East. I think it was Hong Kong potentially, but it was a CEO or country manager was the approver, should we say, of the AP process. And a physical video link was hacked. So the hackers were impersonating the CEO on video. That's how sophisticated that deep fake was. So button was pressed, approval was made, and that money was pushed out to the hackers. I mean, we see, what do we see? So we see bogus purchase orders. Some of our members talk about that. Yeah, and misuse of dormant or lookalike entities when securing credit lines. We see that. But what I would say, just quickly, in our workshops, whenever we focus on fraud or trying to prevent, we talk about the value of pattern recognition. So spotting those mismatches. If it's order volumes, or if it's urgency, if that customer really wants it now, something that you guys will echo on the panel, but also contact details as well. So we're getting them to understand, these credit teams to understand what those mismatches are and how to identify them.
Thank you for educating me as well this morning, Luke. That's really useful. Has anyone else experienced any of this deep fake stuff?
No, I mean, it's interesting actually listening to what Luke's saying there is, in answer to your question, not knowingly, I haven't been subject to it, but they may be very, very successful, having said that, and you're not even aware of it. But I think the point that Luke said there about it then doubles down into the impersonation area, where there is an issue which we have been, Tarmac and CRH, our parent, have been used or attempted to be used in frauds, using, as a company, getting payment from a third party. Could be factors, it could be others in that world, whether it's an insurance claim or something of that ilk, that we have picked up, and luckily no money has been paid out on the basis of it. But it is very easy, and particularly when you're a large business, they're gambling on the fact that you just simply won't join up those dots. I think the points that have been made there about being aware of it is the most important thing. The second thing also is we're developing what's called a fraud filter, which we're using to educate the business, particularly in the commercial world, in the commercial offices, to be able to do a little checklist. If it gets through the filter, you are fine. If it doesn't, and if you've got any red flags against any of them, you refer it so that it can be looked at in greater detail. That's how we're trying to approach it.
All right. Thanks for raising that, Louise. I hope that response has been helpful. Has anyone got any recent successes on the fraud front they want to share?
I have.
Go on then, Simon.
So
I'm sort of guessing you've been successful in avoiding fraud rather than committing it. That was
avoiding a fraud. Now, this was after one of the sales offices, order offices, had an issue with a fraud, and it did result in us losing money. It was stopped fairly quickly, but it was about somebody impersonating a third party and then using that, getting it delivered to a completely different site and so on. When you delved in, it was quite easy to do. We used that to educate the business. We went out and we talk about fraud every single meeting we have with the commercial staff. This particular one, our office in the north, up in Newcastle, spotted a fraud exactly as been described by Jade. They and also Jonathan, they spotted that the material that was being taken was wrong for that particular. And it was somebody, I'll tell you who it was, because it's juicing, somebody trying to use one of the builders merchants as a method of supplying. And it was picked up, it was refused. They went straight back to Juicing saying, do you know about this? Who went, I have no idea what you're talking about. The whole thing was stopped. That, with the orders that they were trying to place, would have been 50 grand. So it's not small money in the slightest. And Juicing were very pleased with us in terms of doing that, because it stops them getting involved in it, causes them an issue. So it is a major plus, and big pat on the back to the guys up there.
Hello, Emma here again. Thank you for listening. If there are any other questions, please do contact us on LinkedIn. Just search Top Service Limited. And also do check out a video version of this podcast on our YouTube channel. Once again, search for Top Service Limited. If we don't see you online, we will see you in the next episode, where we will help you to maximise your cash and minimise your debt. Bye bye from Top Service.